Hello, tech leaders. I'm Carol Palombini, psychologist and tech leadership coach, and this is my podcast, Tech Minds Insights. My mission is to be the change agent for tech leaders grappling with communication issues, imposter syndrome, burnout, and the complexity of the tech leadership roles. In this show, I interview leaders and consultants working in the tech space to provide you with the real world insights into the challenges of leadership. If you want to be part of the show or have questions you'd like me to ask my guests, send me an email or a direct message on LinkedIn. And today we are going to talk about stress and burnout. Did you know that research shows that 56% of IT professionals can't relax once their workday is over? Also, 62% feel physically and emotionally drained. Although the World Health Organization, defined burnout as a workplace condition, it's a chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. This means that eliminating burnout risks is an organizational responsibility. But on the other hand, we suffer the effects individually. So today, my guest is going to speak about building resilience through breath. And she is Kasia. During a 10-year career working in the corporate and tech scale-up world, Kasia experienced firsthand the toll that stress can take on your body. She now works as a breathwork coach, helping founders, coaches, CEOs, and tech leaders to cultivate a sense of calm, increased resilience, and feel more alive and connected through the power of the breath and nervous system's regulation techniques. Welcome, Kasia.
Thank you so much for having me, Carol. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you for being my guest. So, Kasia, I understand that you experienced burnout. This was the first thing we talked when we met. So can you share how it affected you and how you overcame it?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess the background is I'm like your classic type A, hardworking. I set high standards for myself. And my burnout came when I was living and working in London. So I had a busy social life. I was working for a large tech scale up as they went through their IPO journey. And I guess over the course of several years, the signs that I was approaching burnout were there. So it was a really exciting time in my life, and I was really kind of pushing myself. So work-wise, lots of great opportunities, interesting people and challenges, but also it was incredibly demanding. Deadlines, the demands I put on myself, etc. And I guess the early signs were my sleep got worse. I started to develop some stomach issues. I started having panic attacks or anxiety attacks, and my period stopped. And honestly, initially, I thought that was a bit of a blessing because I was like, one less thing for me to manage. But eventually, yeah, my body said, okay, enough is enough. And if you're not going to listen to signs, you're going to stop in totality. And it all kind of came crumbling down when I was trying to do something so mundane. I was trying to pick which saucepan to buy. And I found the decision overwhelming. And yeah, at that point, I had to take some time out of work. I couldn't really do simple tasks or make decisions. And so from there, I started to explore, okay, how can I get a sense of normality back in my life, feel calmer? And I guess I tried quite a few things. I tried coaching, I did yoga, I did meditation, and I think they all helped to a degree. But the reality was I found them to be quite hard work. And then I randomly found myself in this breathwork session. It was half an hour. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I had this sense of peace and calm in my body. And that's when I kind of lent into breathwork more and slowly built up my resiliency, returned to work. And felt like a much better, more grounded version of myself.
It's amazing that you mentioned this. People should know that I recently had a breath session with Kasia. It was amazing. I was super stressed because I'm releasing a lot of new things and challenges. New challenges always brings me this high level of anxiety. And I really needed that. And for me, the experience was really different than what I've lived before during meditations and retreats. So the fact that that I had someone interacting with me and holding space was amazing. And I know you would love to know this, but this night, when I woke up in the middle of the night and I was feeling anxious again, I got back to that feeling that we had during the session about where is my comfort, where is my power, and I dove into that again, and I actually got more 30 minutes of deep rest that I measured with the application, the phone, the watch that I have. So it really helped me not only on that day, but it has a lasting effect. It was really amazing and I loved it. And some people already know that I did even silent retreat. So I'm not like a newbie at this, but it actually is easier than meditating. It's something that you can see it fitting more into your routine than actually meditating, although they are all great ways of finding balance and overcoming stress. But this was a new way for me, and I really loved it. So I think that people would also, my audience really like science and brain stuff. So could you explain a little better what happened in my brain, in my body, when I was experiencing the stress and burnout, and what happens then when we get into the breath work?
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you so much for sharing that feedback. It's amazing to hear that you felt better, not just during the session, but exactly you were feeling those lasting results. But yeah, when we think about burnout and stress and what's happening in your body, you have to look at your nervous system. So your nervous system is like your body's control center. It looks after your movement, your breathing, your digestion. And what happens when you experience something stressful is your nervous system goes more into what we call the sympathetic branch. This is more commonly known as your fight or flight response. And if at the end of the day, you don't do things to help you relax and come back to what we call rest and digest, this extra energy, this stress stays in your nervous system. Now, you might initially experience that as like poor sleep, for example, or becoming more reactive. And as that increases over time, so the stress in your body builds up, your nervous system becomes more fragile. So you become even more reactive and you overreact to things that previously you could have handled. And then you get to a point where you meet your range of resiliency. This is like how much stress you can tolerate within your body without having to do anything. You can naturally dissipate that. And when you exceed that, that's when you experience things like, rage, anxiety, panic attacks, maybe. You're very reactive. And I guess the important thing to say is there's many, many people who live in this zone, so outside of your comfort zone, as a high functioning individual. But if you spend too long up here, eventually what happens is, and I love to use this analogy of when you leave your phone in the sun, your phone will tell you, I'm getting too hot, I need to cool down. And your body is giving you the same signs, but we tend to kind of override them or ignore them, or our ego gets in the way and you think, whatever, if I work harder, if I push more, I can get through it. But what actually happens is when you have so much charge in your system, just like your phone will eventually shut down and your body does the same. And that's what we call the freeze response. So your nervous system freezes. And then you experience things like depression, feelings of dissociation. So maybe you're apathetic towards your family life, your work life and things. And that's the classic burnout. And so the job then is trying to regain this fluidity in your nervous system so that you don't feel stuck in some of these really uncomfortable emotions. Does that kind of make sense?
It super makes sense. And I think it's especially important for tech leaders. It also leads to imposter syndrome in many cases because you're so stressed that you think you're not handling it. It's not that everything is overwhelming, it's that you are not able to overcome that.
Totally. I think a great example is actually Elon Musk. So obviously one of the greatest tech leaders, very divisive, but in his autobiography, he talks about he was so stressed at one point when he was building, I think it was Tesla, and that his body shut down and he had to turn off all the lights, lie down flat in the boardroom. And it was one of his board members who came in and had to get him up off the floor and help him. He's one of the greatest minds. And I think we have this misconception that, it's a weakness to go through this and that you can overcome it by doing more. But actually, this is almost a normal or a far too normal response to the stresses that we're experiencing. But there are things you can do earlier on to stop yourself finding yourself, passed out on the boardroom floor.
Exactly. And it seems like some people have only one tool to solve all the problems, like I'll work harder. So that has worked in many cases, but it's not the case for burnout and stress. And it's not that you're not working enough, is that you need to recharge. Once it happened to me, I remember now that I had this eye pain, a very, 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 very sharp pain on the back of my eyes. And I was talking to my coordinator at the time, and her back was facing a window, so I had got all that light from, and her face was in the shadows. Suddenly, I started to lose my peripheral vision, started to be white, and suddenly I got blind, completely blind for some minutes, and a huge migraine popped in my head, and I needed to a dark and cool room to reestablish, to find my balance again. I was feeling quite well that morning. It was not something that happened on that day. It was something that had been accumulating in my body for a long time. And I don't know why, probably because of the environmental circumstances, the stress was shown this way by these body behaviors and in that situation. But it was a particularly good day. I was actually feeling fine. And so sometimes it's difficult to connect, right? We try to find one cause, and that's something that also can be misleading. So you want to connect that physical event with a single cause, and it's most of the time it's not a single cause. It's the way you're living your life, the mindset that you're taking regarding work, success, and what it means to be productive.
Totally. I mean, it's scary, some of these bodily responses, but they're all a wake-up call, to listen, okay, how am I living my life? How much balance have I got? I think far too often I hear from my clients that, when you go to bed at the end of the day, you judge how good your day was based on how productive you were. What if we judged our day based on how much balance we got, or how regulated and we felt, or were we able to respond to stresses in an adequate way, a way that's proportionate to what happened? The reality is we can't get rid of stress. We live in a world with lots of stress. We can try to minimize it, but what really is in our control is building up our resiliency and our tools to deal with it, but also rest, factoring times of rest. Stress isn't really the enemy. It's kind of the absence of rest in a lot of cases. So yeah, it's a complex web, how you're living your life, how you're working. There's never one answer, and it's good to try different things. But yeah, just keeping on going on isn't the answer.
Sure. And when I talk to tech leaders, they are usually responsible for a lot of difficult decisions. Decisions by themselves, they demand a lot of your body. It's not just about your mind. The decisions you make have repercussions in people's lives, and tech leaders are super aware of that. But when you're stressed, our brain's executive function, like reasoning and problem solving, can become impaired. So this means it can be difficult to think clearly and make rational decisions. Stress can also increase emotional reactivity, making us more prone to impulsive choices. I was analyzing a post the other day of a CEO who was mentioning that he given up on remote working, and he decided that everyone had to step up to the office, to go back to the office. He was considering hybrid, but he was leaning to office work. And his decision was based on a trauma that he lived by watching some people that should be working and was actually at the beach making fun of their employers. So he was so traumatized, that caused so much stress in him, that he made an emotional decision based on 2-3 people that he weren't even related to. So what happened there? His afraid of being misled by his employees, that his employees would be doing the same, shut down his analytical mind. Okay, this is not to consider and to check that that's not a sample big enough for you to make a decision. It's not a research, it's not everything, it's just a testimonial, something that happened. And he was making an executive decision based on that. So, okay, so imagine now the clients, they are already stressed. So that boat has sailed and they are now living this. What breath work can do for them if they are already super stressed? How can it help with burnout?
Yeah, so I guess to those people listening who don't know what breathwork is, I'll start there. So breathwork is basically when you bring awareness to your breathing, and then you consciously change how you're breathing in order to bring about a shift in how you feel. And that might be how you feel emotionally, physically, or mentally. Let me ask you, Carol, to kind of bring this to life in terms of stress. When was the last time that you remember feeling maybe particularly stressed or outside your comfort zone?
I think that it happens to me every time I have a new workshop with a new client. It's just the first one. After I get to know the people there, I'm super relaxed and it becomes easy. But even as an extroverted person who is confident, and I'm confident in my own communication, I get super, super excited, overexcited before these engagements.
Yeah. So that's quite a normal response. You know, you're doing something that's a little stressful or outside your comfort zone. You feel this activation in your system. For you, that might make you more talkative, for example. Other people, they might notice their heart rate going more quickly, their breath becomes shorter and shallower in your upper chest. And you're in sort of a version of fight or flight. So you're activated. But if you're presenting, in your case, you want to be in this cool, calm, and collected place. Now, there are a few ways you can go about that. Number one, which I think is probably the most common that most people are familiar with, is this sort of positive thinking. It's a top-down approach. It's your brain telling your body, Carol, everything's going to be fine, I'm well prepared, etc. And that is effective. But a more effective approach is what we call a bottom-up approach. So it's your body communicating with your brain that everything's okay. And the reason that's so effective is because there are 4 times as many neurons running from your body to your brain as your brain to your body. And this is where the breath comes in. So the breath is so effective because when you slow down your breathing, so maybe you breathe down into your belly, you extend your exhale, your brain is constantly spying on your body, and it reads that as a sign that Carol must be fine. She's safe, she's not anxious, because her breathing is nice and slow and nice and regular. And then your brain does the rest of the work. So your brain will tell your heartbeat to slow down, your palms to stop sweating, and that brings you into this cool, calm, collected place. So the breath really is the quickest and simplest tool that you have to change how you feel in the moment. And the way I like to kind of think of it is focus on changing your physical state through your breath, and then your thoughts, actions, and feelings will follow. So don't try and change those first, focus on your body. And there's a beautiful example. There's this amazing tennis player called Ariana Sabalenka. I think that's how you say it. So she had reached, I think it was 4 semifinals of Grand Slam. She was number 2 in the world, and she kept choking when it came down to these like high pressure moments. So she was really feeling the emotions and the stress of these Grand Slams, and it was preventing her from winning. So she was feeling really, really stressed. And in a recent Netflix documentary, you see her at the Australian Open. She is preparing for either the semi or the final, and her coach is doing some breathing exercises with her. And he says to manage her emotions, you need breath regulation. And she goes on to win that Grand Slam and become world number 1. And I think it's such an amazing example of whether it's stress or burnout or just meeting these really big moments in your life which are full of emotion. Your breath is your best friend to help you manage that and kind of achieve whatever it is you want to achieve without being crippled by the stress.
Oh, that's amazing. While you were speaking, I was, okay, where is your breath now? Is it in your belly? Cool down. What are you feeling now? That's maybe, where are your thoughts taking you? Are you here in the moment? Because when you start paying attention to your breath, you ground, you go back to the present moment. Your mind wanders much less. It's easier to be connected, right?
Totally. Exactly. That's what they say. The breath is the present moment. And
Yeah.
sometimes just that practice of bringing awareness to your breath, notice that there's so much information in your breath. If you bring your focus there and you realize you're breathing in your upper chest, you're breathing quite quickly, it's a sign that you're stressed. And from there, you can do something about it. So you can consciously slow your breath down, for example. So not only is there a lot of information in it, but as you said, it makes you present. And the truth is, in the present moment, there often are far fewer things to worry about than we think. We're worrying about future problems or how we looked in the past. And actually, when you come back to the present moment, you realize right now everything's fine. I don't need to feel this stress per se. So yeah, it's so powerful, so simple.
Yes, and it's something that when you stress, you're bringing a future possibility, because usually it's anxiety. So you're
Mm,
bringing a future possibility to become real today, because you're
exactly.
already feeling the consequences of that. You're already nervous. And there would be a possibility in the future that that outcome just doesn't happen, and you're just
Exactly.
beforehand.
Exactly. I have to admit this because I had the same sort of reminder the other day, and I was like, oh, it's all about, I feel okay when I'm in the present. So I Googled how to be more present. And the number one thing that comes up is focus on your breathing. And I just couldn't help but laugh because here I am running a business all about breathing. And even I forget sometimes, and you have to be reminded. So, yeah, check in with your breathing, slow down. It's so simple, it's so effective. So, but yeah, we all forget.
There's one last thing that I would love you to talk about is explaining the difference between stress management and stress resilience. I think that this is super important and most people don't know the difference.
Yeah, definitely. I think some people use the term interchangeably, but actually they are quite different. So, stress management is really the tools and techniques that you might use in a moment when you feel stressed. So, for you, those workshops, how can you or what can you do in those moments to come to a cool, calm, and collected place? Everyone, for everyone, it's different. So, some people it might be going on a walk in nature, calling a friend, having a bath, or doing some simple breathing techniques. So that's about you're in a moment of stress. How do you deal with it? And stress resiliency is really your ability to sit with and be with stress. It's how much stress can you handle? And this is something you can build over time. So you would do this by purposefully putting yourself or exposing yourself to a stressful situation and remaining cool and calm, collected during that. So a great one that I use with a lot of clients is an ice bath or cold water exposure, because when you get in an ice bath, your immediate like physiological response is, oh my God, this is really cold, and you want to get out, and you're flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. And but in that moment, by overriding those automatic responses and remaining calm, you're training your body so that next time you're in a stressful situation that you didn't control and you didn't purposely put yourself in, your body knows, okay, I've felt this cortisol, this adrenaline before. I know how to deal with it. So yeah, if stress management is what you do in the moment, stress resilience is preparing for those moments so that over time, something that once stressed you will no longer stress you.
Does that work also for like fasting?
Exactly. Fasting is a great example of building resiliency. Anything that kind of pushes you outside your comfort zone. So sometimes they say, like, endurance sports. And from a breath perspective, you can also practice that. So things like apnea training, learning to hold your breath, it's what the deep sea divers do when they hold their breath for a long time. Because when you experience this sensation of air hunger, needing to take a breath, that is stressful for both your body physiologically and psychologically. So that's one way of building resiliency through the breath. Another one is to work with a breathwork practitioner, and they can take you on these deeper journeys, much like the one we did, where you do invite a stress-inducing breath into your body, and you learn to be with that. So yeah, the two concepts are quite different, and both really important to have tools that work for you to help you with both of those.
Okay, so what would be a simple breathing technique that would help you even either to manage or to build stress resilience that you would recommend to our audience who is these tech leaders? They're super stressed and overwhelmed with work, perfectionist people, and that really need help not to burn out.
Yeah, okay. I mean, there's lots of tools out there. I think two of the most effective. One is making your exhale longer than your inhale. So you breathing in through the nose, maybe do it with me now. So taking a deep breath in through your nose, in for a count of 4. So in, 2, 3, 4, and then out for 8. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And repeating that a few times really helps. It brings you into this state of rest and digest. When you have a long exhale, that calms your system. Then you can do that quietly sitting at your desk. No one even needs to know you're doing it. And the other one is humming. So taking a deep breath in through the nose and then on the exhale, making a humming sound. And what that does is it stimulates your vagus nerve, which is the main nerve in your rest and digest part of your nervous system. And it really, really helps. Quite a fun one to do. Obviously, it's a bit noisier, but yeah, try it. Do it when you're in the shower, when you're driving or walking along. And yeah, I think that one for me is the most effective.
Oh, I'll try this one. This one I didn't know. I like that. I like the sound, the meditation with the sounds as well. I think I'm going to like this one. Oh my God, I have so many things to tell you, like about the fasting experience that I had. I also took an apnea course.
So, did you? Amazing.
Yes, I did. So but we're gonna have to leave it for another day, but we should talk about that. And if you're watching this, Kasia, she does one-on-one breathing, online breathing sessions. So that's what I took with her, was a one-on-one breathing session, 1.5 hour breathing session that I intend to do now every month. Because I think it's super healthy, and it has a lasting effect. And since I've tried apnea, I've tried fasting, I think this is going to be a more gentle way as well to build this resilience, this stress resilience. So just to close our amazing podcast, what is a book or a podcast recommendation you can give our audience for them to deal with this?
Yeah, I would recommend, if you're interested in learning a bit more about the breath, to try James Nestor's book, Breath, the new science of a lost art, it's called. It is so fascinating. It talks all about just the importance of how impactful your breath is and how you feel. He goes into burnout and things like that, but also, yeah, how you can use it as a form of healing. It's absolutely fascinating. So I jump into that, very accessible.
Oh, thank you very much. And if people want to find you and hire you, how can they reach you?
Yeah, so either find me on LinkedIn, or you can find me via my website, which is andbreathe.co. And you can find out a bit more about the one-on-one sessions I do there, and also the corporate and startup workshops that I run to educate your teams on some of these tools.
Perfect. So I'll leave her contacts in the description of the video or the post or wherever you're watching this. And thank you very much, Kasia, for being my guest today and for all these amazing insights and conversation. And if you found this conversation interesting, please consider sharing it. If you're feeling stuck in your leadership career or want to improve your leadership skills, book a chat and let's talk. Just click on the link I included in the post or video description, and I'll see you on the next episode of Tech Minds Insights. Bye-bye.